Chapter 71, The Beginning of a Legend. A/N, this chapter might not be suited for those under 18. It will involve some gore. The bandits, as well as the ninjas, didn't understand what move was made. But considering that it was made by a kid, they didn't attach a lot of importance to it. The slash didn't have any color, so they couldn't actually see an incoming slash. Instead, they just noticed wind moving towards them at a high speed and dust rising up as the winds approached them. The bandits hadn't ever seen any ninjutsu, so they just kept running straight, banking on their numbers. The ninjas, however, were alert. When the slash came close, they jumped 5 to 6 feet in the air to avoid it. When the slash reached them, it was around 50 meters wide. It first hit the bandits who were running like bulls. It immediately cut them in half at their abdomens. The bandits who were following them didn't get any time to react and were cut in two as well. Next, the sharp winds that were generated by the slash hit the jumping ninjas. It created shallow cuts all over their body. The unfortunate ones had their throats or wrists slit open. A few had winds cutting through their nails and skin, causing them to scream loudly in pain. Almost all had their eyes getting cut by the winds. In all, only 4 genins and 2 chinins were lucky, or perhaps unlucky, to survive. 1 chinin and 2 genins lost both their eyes, while the remaining 2 genins lost an eye each. They were horrified. The entire first wave of 50 bandits and ninjas was defeated by a single swing of the sword. And it still wasn't over. The bandits in the second wave, who had just reached the edge of the forest, were terrified of what they saw happen to their fellow bandits. Color drained from their face at that sight. The sword slash, which was initially colorless, now had a tinge of blood-red color to it. In no time, it hit the forest and flew through it, cutting down bandits and trees alike. Unlike the bandits, the ninjas in this group reacted quickly. Some dug underground. Some grouped together and created a layered rock shield protection. Others just ran up the trees to the top and jumped as high as they could. After penetrating around 40 meters into the forest, the slash lost its edge and died down due to the high number of trees in its path. The attack littered the field with blood and pieces of human bodies. The forest adjacent to the open field was completely in ruins. Though this attack was watched by a lot of people, none of them knew that this was the start of a legend. In the future, this attack would form the groundwork for that young man to create a whole new combat style that would wreak havoc in the ninja world. Hoka and Miko were stupefied on seeing the result of a single swing of Fujin's sword. Their mouths were wide open in shock. Unlike them, who were just shocked due to Fujin's attack, the 50 bandits on the hill who saw the attack were terrified. The scene seemed like an extremely bad nightmare. A few bandits fainted due to fear and trauma. One bandit yelled in terror. That woke up the rest and they began scurrying away. Even the ninjas were terrified and began retreating along with the bandits. Tamanaha Norio, who was leading them, wanted to stop them, but he realized that there was no point in stopping them as their morale had hit rock bottom. So he decided to retreat and regroup. While retreating, he looked at the kid who swung the sword and thought, "That's a genin." Seeing them about to retreat, Renjiro sighed and created a shadow clone. I knew Fujin's attack would create such an impact. He looked at the scurrying bandits and smirked, "These guys are really unfortunate." He and his clone slammed their hands on the ground, pouring a huge amount of chakra into it. Earth Release, Rock Avalanche Jutsu. Earth Release, Mud River Jutsu. As soon as they slammed their hands on the ground, a rock avalanche formed and began rolling down the hill. The ninjas were about to run away, when the ground under their feet turned into mud, making them lose their balance and fall. One of them fell into the mud river, including the Jounin. And a few seconds later, the rock avalanche went down the river. The bandits as well as the ninjas saw the terrifying scene in front of them. They couldn't move, as their legs were stuck in the mud river. The river began dragging them down the slope, toward those murders down the hill. And, in front of them, huge rocks were rolling down the hill towards them. They yelled in despair, but in a mere few seconds, they were all crushed to death. Only one survived. Tamanaha Norio, too, freaked out seeing the huge rocks rolling toward him. He was about to jump when his legs got stuck in the mud river that suddenly formed under him. The mud then began moving down the hill at a quick speed. He quickly made a few hand signs, water prison jutsu. A water barrier soon formed around him. At the next second, a rock rolled down on him. It hit the water bubble and pushed it to the bottom of the mud river. But it couldn't pop it. The rock was about to roll over. So Norio sighed in relief. Unfortunately for him, in the next second, a stone spear appeared at the bottom of the mud river and penetrated through it. It quickly penetrated the water prison bubble. Norio noticed the spear at the last moment and tried to get out of the way. It still stabbed through his body, but he was able to avoid getting hit on any vital body part. Renjiro was surprised when he sensed that the guy was still alive. However, he wasn't worried, he is just extending his own misery. While he managed to stay alive, getting stabbed by the spear disrupted his control over the water prison. It collapsed and he got buried under mud. Norio gritted his teeth, with blood flowing through his mouth, and forced himself against the flow of the river, trying to remove the stone spear from his body. Unfortunately for him, his struggle, grit, and determination for survival will never be known to anyone. At the next moment, small spikes began growing out of the spear that stabbed him. That stopped his attempt to move immediately, causing him to yell in pain and vomit more blood. When he yelled, the mud from the river entered his mouth. Soon the small spikes grew into spears, poking out of his body. His struggle finally ended, as he died, with a dozen stone spears poking out of his body, and he was buried 10 meters deep in a mud river. A/N initially wanted to name this chapter, Life is Fragile, due to all the deaths in it. Just couldn't resist naming it what I did though. Chapter 72, First Real Battle. While Renjiro cleared up the rear, Fujin, Hoka, and Miko made a move on the injured ninjas. Of the 15 ninjas from the first wave, only 6 were alive, with just one Chunin being in a state to fight. They were terrified by their wounds and were running towards the forest. And of the 10 ninjas from the second wave, only 2 had jumped high up in the air, and hence were on top of the ruined forest. The remaining 8 ninjas, though unharmed, were buried under a ruined forest. Hoka activated his Byakugan and said, "Those 8 ninjas are trapped, they'll need some time to get out. Let's attack." In an instant, all 3 flickered toward the retreating ninjas. Miko flickered behind the Chunin who could still fight and tried stabbing him with a kunai. However, he turned around and defended himself in time. He shouted aggressively, "I may be injured, but don't you brats look down on me." However, his thoughts were the exact opposite, Just one opportunity. I'll regroup with others and be safe. Unfortunately for him, while shouting, he looked into Miko's eyes. Miko didn't miss the chance and cast genjutsu on him. Hoka engaged the blinded Chunin. That Chunin had lost his sight, and his right leg was badly cut. However, even in that state, he still aggressively attacked Hoka with every weapon he had. This fight back was a testimony to his experience and desperation. Hoka, however, stayed calm and took his stance. He said, "You are in range." And attacked, 8 trigrams, 16 palms. All of Hoka's attacks hit on point, with the last one hitting his opponent's chest and stopping his heart. That Chunin dropped dead. Unlike Miko and Hoka, Fujin went for the weakest ones first. He flickered behind the 2 blinded genins and killed them both with one strike of his sword. He quickly flickered to the remaining 2 genins one by one and killed them as well. Neither of the 4 could even block one attack from Fujin. Just one of those 4 managed to raise his kunao to block Fujin's sword, but his kunao got cut into 2, just like his body. Of the 2 ninjas who were above the debris, one was Chunin, while the other was Genin. They were still fearful of that sword slash that wrecked the forest as well as of the rock avalanche. So they didn't react when the 3 kids they were looking at flickered. When they noticed, the Chunin quickly moved to aid his comrades. But even before he took a couple of steps, Fujin had killed 2 of them. That halted his steps. In the next few seconds, he saw Fujin kill 2 more and look straight at him. He quickly retreated behind thinking, what a bunch of crazy kids. Are they even kids? Did Konoha send their feared Umbu under disguise? He looked down at the debris and screamed internally, where are the rest? Get out quickly. The genin also retreated. Fujin stayed back after killing his opponents. Around half a minute later, Hoka killed his opponent. And soon after, Miko's opponent stabbed his own throat. Fujin flickered next to Miko right after she was free and said, "Let's do it." She nodded and made a few hand signs. Fire Wind Dragon Jutsu. Both Fujin and Miko could see the chakra of the ninjas making their way to get out of the debris. A 50-meter huge dragon, mostly made of extremely hot air and having 4 claws and many teeth made of fire. Seeing that dragon, those 2 began running even faster toward the 3rd wave. The dragon moved rapidly and got above the debris. It then dived down right where 6 ninjas were making their way up. They were just about to remove the last log blocking their way when the dragon dived down right at them. Fortunately for them, they had one novice sensor who screamed, "Cast defensive water jutsu above us. Hurry." Fortunately, the group had a Chunin whose nature affinity was water. He quickly made hand signs, "Water shield jutsu." A water barrier appeared above him. It curved like the surface of a sphere and had a thickness of 6 inches, and was growing thicker as he poured more chakra into it. When the dragon was 10 meters above the group, it opened its mouth and launched a wind explosion sphere, made of extremely hot air. It hit the barrier and exploded. The barrier protected the group from the winds, but it got dispersed. In the next second, the dragon slammed into them and exploded into flames, which moved rapidly due to assistance from the winds. The ninjas saw the dragon coming toward them and tried to disperse. Unfortunately, the debris around them blocked any escape route. They all took a direct hit. The fallen trees around them were also set on fire. The fire began spreading quickly. Not having any path, they jumped through the hole created by the dragon. Fujin saw that the attack hit successfully, but sighed thinking, it's a shame that wind dragons don't have intelligence like wind clones. This jutsu will become very formidable if that happens. All 6 ninjas managed to jump out of the debris and run away from the fire. The water affinity Chunin made hand signs and created a water barrier around him, and dropped it on himself to douse the fire. He then spat water jets on the other 5 starting with the censer. He managed to douse all fire on them. Both he and the censer had first-degree burns, while 2 had second-degree burns. The last 2 had fainted and were in very bad shape. They would need immediate medical treatment. Around that time, the remaining 2 ninjas who were buried under the debris managed to get out. All the ninjas from the second wave finally managed to regroup. At the same time, the third wave of bandits reached the edge of the forest, i.e., the debris. Seeing that, Fujin, Hoka, and Miko didn't advance and waited there. Renjiro had cleared up the hill by then and had slowed the avalanche with the mud river and made the rocks fall slowly on the ground. He flickered behind the team, while his clone kept an eye on the merchants. The debris blocked the bandits. They couldn't travel any further. The ninjas, however, had a bad feeling. Wagarashi Tomio led the ninja to the top of the debris, where he regrouped with the remaining ninjas. He was shocked, only 8 are remaining from the 100 who attacked. And half of them are already injured. It hasn't even been a few minutes since the first wave should have reached them. His eyes then wandered towards the hill on the other side of the field. Even the 50 who should have attacked from the hill are nowhere to be seen. Where did that useless Norio go? Also, why does it look like there was a landslide there? He quickly asked Ichinin, who was uninjured, what happened here? Tell quickly. Also, where are Tamanaha Norio and the rest? While asking, all his attention was on Senju Renjiro. With so few numbers, he wasn't at all confident about taking on him. The rest of the 9 ninjas who were with him were also on full alert. That Chunin was the same one who retreated earlier. He was intimidated by Tomio but quickly began explaining to him. Over at Team Renjiro, when the ninjas from the third wave began regrouping with those from the second wave, Fujin said, those from the third wave will be very confused. We need to attack quickly. Any suggestions, sensei? While asking, he was thinking, if it was just defense, the best way will be to completely burn down this forest. The fire will act as a wall. Then Renjiro could The fire will act as a wall. Then Renjiro could go and hunt them. But if we want to eliminate them entirely, then the fire will prove to be an obstruction for us, and killing them all will need a lot of effort. Renjiro nodded and said, my clone will look after the merchants. So let's just attack them head on. I'll take that Jounin head on and finish him off. You guys stall the rest. I'll make another clone to watch over you guys. On saying that, he made the clone hand seal, created another shadow clone, and said, let's go. On saying that, he made the clone hand seal, created another shadow clone, and said, let's go. All 5 of them flickered. A/N, Sai, had to rewrite the whole battle. Initially wrote it by having the surviving ninja being scared shit of Fujin, and had Fujin using 2 more similar slashes, along with Renjiro breaking their defenses, resulting in a near-complete wipeout. While it seemed kinda epic, it didn't really make much sense that each and every one of those ninjas would be scared to that extent by such a simple technique. Even had the trio reacted a lot to Renjiro's combo jutsu from the last chapter. Something that would only be safe to do when enemies are paralyzed with fear. So rewrote the fight. This is what I had initially written in case anyone's interested. The rock avalanche and mud river generated enough noise to attract the attention of the three genins. The rock avalanche and mud river generated enough noise to attract the attention of the three genins. Having seen the waterfall jutsu, Hoka and Fujin weren't surprised by the power. They were, however, surprised by the fact that just 2 earth release jutsu can cause such a slaughter. Earth, after all, was known for its defense. Miko, on the other hand, was flabbergasted. She had heard about Renjiro's waterfall jutsu from Hoka, but seeing herself was shocking. On the side of the forest, 6 ninjas were alive on the open field, while 2 were alive and standing on top of the ruined forest. They first saw the sword slash and then the ones who could still see, saw the rock avalanche killing more than half of their numbers. Soon, 8 ninjas who were buried under the forest made their way out. They were shocked to see that the ambush from the hill seemed to have disappeared. Instead, they could see a mud river and a few huge rocks floating in them. The mud river killed the momentum of the avalanche and the rocks slowly slid down the hill through the river. At that time, the third wave of bandits emerged from the forest. However, they were blocked by 4 meters of ruined forest. The bandits couldn't move forward, but the ninja jumped over the ruined forest and grouped with the 10 ninjas, who had stopped over the ruined forest. From here, they could see all the blood and dead bandits and ninja on the plains. Wagarashi Tomio was shocked by this sight. What happened here? He went towards the leader of the second wave and asked him, what happened? And where is Norio? He was about to speak when he noticed one of the genins raise his sword, and swung it. He was at the forefront of the second wave, and he had noticed Fujin swing his sword earlier. He immediately shouted, "Take cover." Wagarashi Tomio was surprised and looked at Fujin. He noticed a wave approaching them, and he noticed all ninjas from the first and second wave scurry around. Of the 6 alive ninjas from the first wave, only 1 was relatively uninjured. He quickly dug a hole and went underground. The remaining 2 one-eyed ninjas ran backward in fear. While the 3 who were blinded had already lost consciousness. The sword slash ended up killing the 3 blinded ninjas as well as the 2 ninjas who ran away. The remaining 20 ninjas who were in the ruined forest gathered together. The leader of the second wave shouted at Tomio, "Quickly use earth wall jutsu. Make it as big and thick as you can." Tomio was displeased. Why is he shouting at me and commanding me? However, he could sense the fear in his shout and quickly used earth wall jutsu. All the 20 ninjas took cover behind it. While they were taking cover, Hoka used Byakugan and looked for the 2 ninjas who went underground. He quickly made hand signs, stone spear jutsu and ambushed them underground. Neither could react and were stabbed to death. Renjiro focused on the 20 ninjas hiding behind the wall. He smirked and punched the ground in front of him. At the same time, Fujin swung his sword once again. The punch released earth release, ground shockwave jutsu. It traveled faster than Fujin's slash and hit the earth wall just a few seconds before Fujin's first slash reached it. It caused the erected earth wall to collapse. The ninjas, who finally had a sense of security, were dumbfounded. Two ninjas from the second wave immediately began creating hand signs to go underground. The others from the second wave quickly tried climbing on the fallen trees behind them and jumping high up. Unfortunately two, in panic, stepped on very weak branches and lost their footing. The ones from the third wave didn't understand the urgency and were slow to react. Only Tomio, sensing their panic, jumped back and quickly created a rock shield as he didn't have enough time to create an earth wall. Three ninjas from the third wave hid behind Tomio. Fujin reached them. It first hit the ninja who was trying to go underground but couldn't complete his hand signs. Then it hit three ninjas from the third wave who didn't take it seriously. One ninja was cut into two, while the other two were hit by the accompanying winds which left deep cuts all over them. The winds then hit the two who had lost their footing, causing them to bleed all over. And next, it hit the remaining four ninjas from the third wave, leaving them with similar, but slightly less severe injuries. Right when the ones who had jumped high up were about to fall, the second slash arrived. This ended up killing or maiming everyone other than the four who were hiding behind multiple rock shields built by Wagarashi Tomio and the one who was hiding underground. Seeing the result, Fujin said, "I don't think that the remaining five will die from this attack." Miko replied, "That's good. I want to fight," and flickered towards them. Hoka followed her. Renjiro said, "Fujin, look after the merchants." And he flickered behind those two. A/N, stopped it here. I initially didn't have Renjiro create a clone in the, that's why no mention was there in this initial draft. Chapter 73, Fujin vs 11 Genins. Wagarashi Tomio was keeping an eye on Renjiro the whole time. The Chunin had just begun explaining the situation to him, telling him about a wind slash and how it was accompanied by winds that cut when Renjiro created a clone. He immediately commanded, "Get ready. I'll engage that Chunin. All Chunins will fight alongside me." He looked at his second in command and commanded, "Masato, lead the Genins and kill those three brats." Mono Masato was standing right next to Tomio. He had a sword hanging from his waist. Since he was an elite Chunin, his rank and power were second only to Tomio among the ninja here. Even overall, his power was only weaker than Tomio and Norio. He had worked with Tomio for a long time, and Tomio considered him his right hand. He nodded to the command given. Team Renjiro flickered till they were 20 meters away from them. Renjiro made a hand sign, water release, water cannon jutsu. Tomio too made a few hand signs while shouting, scatter, and dodge. Water release, water wall jutsu. On hearing his command, all of the enemy ninjas moved back a bit. Renjiro spat a jet of water on them. In response, Tomio created a water wall between them. The wall stopped the jet for a mere fraction of a second. However, that was enough for his ninjas to see the trajectory and dodge the attack. The water jet penetrated the water wall with ease and then sliced it in two as Renjiro moved his head from left to right. The water jet was dodged, however, it kept traveling, hitting the trees in the still undamaged forest. The water jet cut through a few trees with ease before it ran out of energy. The enemy ninja noticed the damage caused by just one attack. Their face became grim. They prepared themselves for a bitter battle. They regrouped into two groups in a few seconds. First with Tomio as the leader and 5 Chunins, and the second with Masato as the leader and 11 Genins. Renjiro noticed this and assaulted Tomio and the Chinins. The trio of Fujin, Hoka, and Miko moved towards the genins. Renjiro's clone followed them at a distance and kept a close eye. Konoha genins vs Masato and genins. All the three Konoha genins had noticed that Masato's chakra level was the second highest in the whole group. While moving towards them, Miko stated, "I want the strong guy." However, Hoka argued, "No, I want him." Fujin said, "He seems strong, both of you take on him. I'll eliminate the rest and join you." Masato and the rest also ran toward the kids running towards them. The group had mixed feelings regarding the three kids running toward them. The ones from the third wave thought, "We need to eliminate them quickly and then aid in killing that Jounin from Konoha." While the ones from the second wave hoped, Masato-sama should be able to handle those demon kids. Among the 11 genins, one had seen Miko use Sharingan earlier. He shouted, "Don't look in her eyes, she has Sharingan." That alerted Masato. He wasn't aware of this. He unsheathed his sword. Miko was faster than Hoka. She reached Masato first and instantly used Fire Release, 4 jutsu that she had already prepared. Masato kept his eye on her hand and raised his sword to block the heat ray. The attack heated his blade but didn't make the handle much hot. At that time, Hoka flanked him and attacked with gentle fist. He smirked, "He is in range." However, Masato moved slightly so that the 4 jutsu won't hit him and then slashed his hot sword at Hoka. Hoka was caught off guard and dodged backward. Unfortunately, he wasn't fast enough. The tip of the sword touched his chest. It cut through his shirt with ease and left a thin line across his chest. Luckily, since he had moved backward, the cut was very shallow. Masato moved forward to chase him, but Miko threw a few shurikens at him, which he blocked with his sword. While he dodged them, Miko flickered and stood next to Hoka. They prepared to fight him. At the same time, the 11 genins wanted to join in the fray and aid Masato. However, Fujin flickered in between them and Masato and created 11 wind clones. One kept eye on Masato, while the rest engaged 1 genin each. One of the genins rushed toward Fujin. Fujin too took a step and moved toward him. While moving, he grabbed the sword in his right hand. His opponent had a kunao in his hand. On closing the distance, Fujin slashed his sword. The enemy genin saw it and smirked. He stamped hard on the debris below and jumped back. When he suddenly stepped back, Fujin's sword slashed through empty air. The opponent kept smirking, "Ha! These inexperienced newbies always fall for the simplest trick in the book." He pulled his arm behind him and was about to throw his kunao at Fujin when something hit his body. The hit created a cut across his body, starting from his right shoulder, to the left side of his hip. The cut kept getting deeper, and cut him into 2. Fujin thought, not a bad move. Unfortunately, he was out of his league. At the same time, all 10 of Fujin's wind clones had engaged the enemy genins. They kept fighting at mid-range and used wind explosion jutsu to prevent opponents from using any jutsu. Fujin observed around him, "Now that I'm free, time to cut down their numbers." He flickered in the next instant and appeared behind a genin who was fighting his clone. The genin was surprised when he noticed someone appearing behind him. Unfortunately, before he could react, a sword pierced through his heart. In a few seconds, Fujin cut down 4 more genins. The others noticed Fujin killing their comrades with extreme ease and panicked. They quickly disengaged from the wind clones and tried to regroup. Masato, who was engaged in a fight with Miko and Hoka, also noticed this. He tried to help them, but he was obstructed by Miko and Hoka. Unfortunately for the enemy genins, regrouping wasn't going to be easy. Noticing that all the enemies have disengaged his clones, Fujin flickered again and appeared behind one of them. That genin noticed and quickly turned around and swung his kunao. In response, Fujin slashed with his sword. Both the kunao and the sword clashed. Fujin's opponent wanted to use this clash to jump behind and get away from him. Unfortunately, Fujin's sword cut through his kunao. It continued ahead and cut the unsuspecting genin into 2. Fujin noticed the shock plastered on the enemy's face when he noticed his kunao being cut in 2. At the same time, another opponent was ganged upon by 4 of Fujin's clones. 2 of the clones used all their chakra to form wind explosion jutsu and scored perfect hits. The other 2 beheaded him when he was very injured. The remaining 3 genins managed to regroup. But they were instantly besieged by Fujin's 8 wind clones, while Fujin stood slightly behind his clones. The 3 genins stood with their backs to each other. Fujin saw it and analyzed, I guess I can't flicker behind them now. Anyways, time to end this. He said in a low voice, wind breakthrough jutsu everyone. Fujin's clones heard him, and all used great breakthrough jutsu at the same time. The 3 genins, who were at the center, instantly became trapped and slammed against each other as they couldn't move due to being hit by strong winds from all sides. They began yelling loudly. Fujin observed the wind patterns and then swung his sword. A slash flew through the strong winds and reached the trapped genins. In an instant, all 3 were beheaded. With all 10 genins killed, Fujin turned his attention to the Chunin Miko and Hoka were fighting. Chapter 75, Masato vs Genins. Masato vs Miko and Hoka. While Fujin had engaged the enemy genins, Hoka and Miko were fighting against Masato. Masato had dealt with the initial attacks from Miko and Hoka with extreme ease and even injured Hoka slightly. Miko noticed the cut on his chest and asked Hoka without taking her eye off Masato, "Can you still fight?" Hoka replied, "Of course. Let's attack." However, before they could attack, Masato moved forward at a fast speed and swung his sword again. Miko took a step ahead and blocked his sword with her kunao. She kept trying to look into his eyes, but he always avoided eye contact with her. Seeing that Miko had blocked his sword, Hoka attacked him with gentle fist once again. Seeing Hoka attack again, Masato just jumped back and retreated. This time, Hoka didn't chase and stood with Miko. Masato observed the two being careful and sighed, "It's unfortunate that there is so much debris here. I can't use earth jutsus at all." Hoka too couldn't use earth release jutsus, but he didn't mind it as he preferred taijutsu over ninjutsu. Masato was about to attack again when he noticed that Fujin was cutting down his genins with ease. Tisk. I should help them. Miko and Hoka noticed him getting distracted and attacked him once again. Miko once again used fire release, for jutsu. Masato quickly dodged but was once again flanked by Hoka. Learning from the past two failed attempts, this time Hoka attacks with the kunao. Masato blocks but Hoka continues his attack with his other hand, trying to seal his chakra points. Masato uses the force Hoka is putting in his kunao attack to jump back. Before Miko and Hoka could press on their attack, he ran towards Fujin. But he was quickly attacked by two wind explosion jutsu by the wind clone Fujin left to keep an eye on him. The wind explosion wasn't actually targeted at Masato. Instead, the clone launched them in such a way that they would cut off his path. They exploded even before reaching them and threatening him with the winds generated. He had to move back to avoid the winds, leading him back to Miko and Hoka. They quickly attacked him, but Masato defended himself again. Only, it was more difficult this time. Miko finally found an opening, and kicked his stomach, sending him flying behind. While he was sent flying, Masato thought, these kids are strong. Even if I fought only one at a time, I'll have a hard time defeating them without earth release. Hoka was about to attack again when he noticed Miko making a few hand signs. He quickly moved out of the way. Masato too noticed the hand signs. Miko finished making her hand signs, fireball jutsu. A huge fireball moved toward Masato rapidly. Hoka followed the fireball from the left. If he dodges here, I'll get him. Masato, noticing Hoka, dodged to the other side. The fireball reached his original location and exploded. Since the debris underneath was mainly wood, it set off another fire. The explosion also sent a lot of burning wood flying in every direction. Masato, even after dodging, had to use his sword to block a couple of burning logs flying toward him. The smoke and dust created by the explosion and fire engulfed him. Noticing the opportunity, Miko threw a few shurikens at Masato. Hoka got back to Miko's position, as fire blocked his straight route to Masato. Masato heard the sound of shurikens flying. He quickly jumped to his left, while frowning, I need to get out of this smoke screen. Both of them have jujutsu. I'll be severely disadvantaged here. However, even after moving, 3 shurikens came at him. He blocked one with his sword, and barely dodged the other 2. One of the shurikens left a cut on his right cheek, while the other shuriken missed his abdomen from the left by a few inches. He sighed in relief after dodging them when he suddenly felt a sense of crisis. He felt 2 strings, one touching right where the cut was left, while another on the left side of his abdomen. Fuck. The shurikens had strings attached. Masato quickly made a hand sign. Miko smirked on seeing that Masato fell for the strings. She pulled them so that they trap him and the shurikens returned to hit him in the back. Hoka too observed with his Byakugan. He saw that Masato got trapped by the strings and the shurikens hitting his back. However, he changed into a log the next moment. Hoka and Miko noticed his chakra reappearing outside the smoke screen. He had a cut on his right cheek and his expression was very grim. He said, "You brats are very good." As he said it, he was analyzing, it's very difficult to fight them here. I need to move to the ground. However, if I move, those genins will be all dead. While thinking, he turned his head to look at his genin underlings. He was shocked as his eyes met Fujin's eyes. All dead? So quickly? Fuck it. Having realized that Fujin would attack him too, he decided to move to the normal ground. The only worry now is if they attack Tomio and other Chunins instead of following me. But if they do that, I can sneak attack them. On concluding his thoughts, he quickly tried moving out of the debris area and into the open field. Miko and Hoka noticed it and thought, not good. He is trying to attack the merchants. Miko quickly made a few hand signs and launched another jutsu, Phoenix Sage Fire Jutsu. Small balls of fire were fired on Misato's path, preventing him from getting away. Hoka used the distraction created by the fireballs to close the distance and attack Misato again. This time, Misato counterattacked fiercely, making Hoka retreat. However, at the next moment, he felt the wind on his back. He quickly turned around and used his sword to block the incoming sword. Fujin, noticing Misato's attempt to run away, used Miko's and Hoka's attacks as a distraction to attack. After blocking the slash, Misato looked around and became worried. Fujin's clones were moving toward him. However, even before he could wonder what to do about them, another incident horrified him. Fujin's sword cut his own sword into two. He quickly released his sword and moved backward, screaming his mind, "What the fuck?" As he moved backward, he noticed Hoka moving rapidly toward him. Hoka smirked, "Time to finish this." He got into stance to perform 8 trigrams. Misato noticed Hoka's stance from the corner of his eyes. He quickly made a hand sign. All the 3 genins noticed that it was the hand sign for substitution jutsu. Hoka pressed on with his attack, while Fujin and Miko prepared themselves by gathering chakra at their feet. Hoka and Misato finally were about to make contact, when Misato substituted with another log of wood. As soon as he substituted, Miko threw a bunch of shurikens so that he couldn't retreat anymore, while Fujin sent a flying slash at him. Misato was on guard and moved out of the way. Unfortunately, the only way available for him was towards Hoka. He had a bitter expression on his face. "These brats are relentless. I have no openings at all." Misato prepared to take Hoka head-on as Hoka rushed towards him. However, before he could engage Hoka, 2 shurikens stabbed him in his back. Fujin smirked, "Projectile control jutsu is really handy." When Misato's attention was occupied on Hoka, Fujin used projectile control jutsu on the shurikens Miko had thrown and changed the direction of a couple of shurikens to hit him. While the hits weren't lethal, they caused Misato great agony. And it finally provided Hoka with an opening. He immediately used 8 trigrams, 16 palms on him, closing a lot of his chakra points. As soon as he was done, he moved behind. Miko and Fujin both stepped in for the kill. They both flickered in. Miko used fire release, 4 jutsu on his chest, right where his heart should be. While Fujin slashed his sword towards his neck. In his final struggle, he tried stepping towards his left, so that he'll move away from Fujin's sword, and Miko's jutsu wouldn't hit his vitals. Miko's jutsu hit the center of his chest, piercing through the elite Chunin's body. Fujin's sword missed Misato's neck by a few centimeters, but at the next moment, his head still flew off in the air due to the increased range from wind chakra flow. Fujin, Hoka, and Miko finally sighed in relief and were excited about managing to kill someone this strong without any aid from their sensei. Misato, however, died in grief. He never got to use the jutsus he was most proficient in. Renjiro's clone had observed the whole fight. Good. Though they made a few mistakes, overall their performance was very good. They were also very lucky though. That guy's nature affinity was probably earth, and he couldn't use it due to the terrain. A/N, probably the last battle where Fujin and others fight under the supervision and complete protection of Renjiro. Need to stop babying them, lol. Chapter 76, The Formidable Renjiro. Renjiro vs Tomio and Chinins. While his students were engaged in combat, Renjiro himself was fighting against the main enemy combatants. Just like Misato, Renjiro too was restricted here due to not being able to use the majority of his earth jutsus. Renjiro observed his opponents, 1 Jounin and 5 Chinins. Been a while since I had to fight against these odds. I wonder if they can put up a fight though. His opponents too observed him. They were very tense. Tomio thought, he specializes in earth and water jutsus. This terrain should void most of his earth jutsus. And I can cancel out his water jutsus. And he won't retreat due to his students, and might even be distracted by them. We have a chance. After concluding his thoughts, Renjiro threw 6 shurikens at his opponents. Immediately, he made a couple of hand signs. Shuriken Shadow Clone Jutsu. The enemy ninjas were amused when they saw that only 6 shurikens were thrown at them. But seeing them suddenly increase to over 100 freaked them. Tomio once again used water wall jutsu to block the shurikens. Renjiro smirked. He was aiming exactly for this. While the water wall protected them, it meant that they couldn't see Renjiro. He grabbed his sword and rushed towards them. Unfortunately, one of them was a censor and he yelled, "He's running toward us." He was the same ninja who had earlier detected Fire Wind Dragon Jutsu. The shout put them on guard and they prepared for a fight. The very instant the water wall collapsed, Renjiro flickered and appeared behind the Chunin who shouted. Before anyone could react, he attacked him with his sword, aiming to cut him in two. Knowing that he couldn't move fast enough, he made a hand sign. Renjiro ended up cutting a log of wood. The enemy ninjas sighed in relief and immediately moved toward Renjiro to attack him right when they saw the censor use substitution jutsu. However, Renjiro still smirked. Though Renjiro's sword cut through a log of wood, his sword emitted chakra that traveled in the form of a slash. It was the samurai saber technique. Though it didn't have the lethal wind chakra that Fujin's slashes had, it was still very lethal. Wagarashi Tomio was the one to notice it and he quickly shouted, "Careful," and moved out of the way of that flying slash. That alerted all Fortunins. 3 of them jumped out of the way successfully. However, the last one was the closest to Renjiro. He too tried jumping but was too slow. The slash hit his knees and slashed halfway through his kneecaps. He collapsed and began yelling in pain. All of the 5 enemies were now at least a few dozen meters from Renjiro. So he just stepped forward and beheaded the injured ninja. He looked at the T-ninjas and coolly said, "Just 5 more to go." That statement put a lot of pressure on them. Tomio understood that Renjiro was trying to crush their morale. He shouted, "Behind me," while retreating away from Renjiro and making a few hand signs. The remaining Chunins quickly moved behind Tomio. Water Dragon Jutsu. Renjiro noticed the hand signs Tomio was making and recognized them. He just waited for him to be done with it. Soon, Tomio expended quite a bit of his chakra to launch Water Dragon Jutsu on Renjiro. However, Renjiro just flickered a few times, completely avoiding the trajectory of the jutsu while muttering, "What a waste of chakra." In an instant, Renjiro was now behind those ninjas, while the Water Dragon Jutsu hit nothing but debris. Renjiro wanted to attack them from behind, but the enemy ninjas had got a hang of Renjiro's fast-paced attacks. The very moment that Renjiro appeared behind them, all three of them made hand signs and launched their jutsus. Water Shuriken Jutsu, Great Breakthrough Jutsu, Flamethrower Jutsu. The three jutsus were released in that order. First, Water Shurikens were launched. They were then aided by Great Breakthrough Jutsu to speed up to nearly twice their initial speed. And then, Flamethrower was released into the Great Breakthrough Jutsu, making it very devastating. Renjiro was very surprised. Good teamwork. However, he just flickered again, resulting in another fire being started. Seeing Renjiro flickering, Tomio made a hand sign. Water Bullet Jutsu. He began shooting water bullets wherever Renjiro appeared. However, Renjiro dodged them all with ease, while occasionally sending a flying slash their way. This stalemate continued for a couple of minutes. Tomio wondered, why isn't he worried about the kids? He tried observing the genins through the corner of his eye, and was shocked. That fight only had Masato still alive, and all three genins were ganging up on him. His expression became very grim. By now, 3 fires were burning in the destroyed part of the forest. A lot of smoke covered the area, and visibility was becoming very low. The remaining 40 bandits were initially confused about what exactly was happening. However, hearing the blasts made them realize that this was the battlefield of ninjas. They too noticed the smoke rising from where the fighting was happening and all ran away in fear. Tomio and the Fortunins with him were breathing heavily. The short exchange made them spend a lot of their chakra. Renjiro, on the other hand, seemed like he had just warmed up. Noticing that they were tired and Tomio was checking out the other fight, Renjiro stabbed the logs under him with his swords and made a hand sign. This instantly got all 5 enemies on full alert. In an instant, Renjiro built up a massive amount of chakra and launched his jutsu. Waterfall Jutsu. Tomio immediately made hand signs to create another water wall. However, he was shocked by the sight in front of him. Renjiro spat out a massive amount of water. They felt, it's as if a tsunami is crashing down on us. Tomio and another Chunin made a couple of water walls. However, it wasn't enough. The waterfall washed all 5 of them away. It also washed out the debris under them and doused one of the 3 fires that were burning. All 5 of them got washed out in the open fields where the merchants and one of Renjiro's clones were. Seeing that they were finally on the ground, Renjiro smirked. All 5 of them suffered some injuries after getting hit by such a huge move. They struggled to get up. Tomio was the first one to recover. He barely managed to get up on his knees while breathing very heavily. However, soon he noticed something that horrified him. They were on the ground. He had just one thought before he jumped up as quickly as he could. Crap. As soon as he jumped, earth spears appeared from the ground. All Fortunins were stabbed. Only Tomio managed to get away. Soon, More spears appeared from the ground, and pierced all 4 of them, until Renjiro was sure that they were dead. Wagarashi Tomio saw all his 4 underlings being killed. He noticed that all other fighting had stopped too. He was horrified and began running towards the land of tea in panic. However, Renjiro flickered in front of him, with a sword in his right hand. The Genins had finished Masato off right after Renjiro used the huge jutsu and were observing the fight. Renjiro looked at Tomio and said, "You know, I'm very surprised that you guys chose to fight us in the land of fire, rather than the land of tea. If you had fought in the land of tea, at the very least, you'd have managed to retreat. But here, all 5 of your forces will be eliminated." Tomio looked at Renjiro in terror and asked, "Has Konoha already recovered from the losses of the Third Great Ninja War and Kyuubi's attack?" Renjiro replied, "Not really. But Konoha isn't something the likes of you can challenge." He then charged straight at Tomio. Tomio grabbed a kunao and prepared to fight. However, in merely one attack, Renjiro sliced his head off. Fujin, Miko, and Hoka saw this sight. In one fluid motion, Renjiro sliced his enemy's head off and sheathed his sword, as if he had done something insignificant. Hoka saw it and commented, "That was cool." Miko snorted and said, "He's just showing off." Fujin nodded, agreeing with Miko. Renjiro looked at his 3 students, who flickered next to him in response. He said, "Good work. Analyze your battle properly. I'll ask for your analysis later." The trio nodded. Fujin asked, "Sensei, will we be doing something about the bandits that ran away?" Renjiro looked at his clones. Both of them flickered toward the bandits. He replied, "Leave them to my clones. While we did win, I won't be surprised if they have someone hidden trying to take advantage of us when we put our guard down." A good number of dead ninjas during peacetime die only due to letting their guard down for a moment. The trio nodded in response, absorbing their sensei's experiences and knowledge. A/N, battles are hard to write. Especially when you consider jutsus like body flicker and substitution. Anyways, the first actual fight that I wrote. Let me know your thoughts. Hey guys. Really wanted to thank everyone for their support after resuming this fanfic. Especially the Patrians. I didn't think I'd receive this level of support back when I decided to restart writing. It has been very motivating. Thank you.